That's a whole nother panel.
Oh.
And if we have anybody familiar with what I've gone through over the last year, is anybody actually familiar with my story on the being ripped off by a bad publisher?
Yes.
Okay. You guys came to my author panel not knowing that I actually wrote a book with words and everything. Really quickly, I wrote a werewolf novel. I'm a horror author 4 years ago and printed off some copies to take to conventions because unfortunately, like in so many other realms, getting published is more in who you know than what you have. And we got tired of paying $45 to have my manuscript sent to a publishing house and have it rejected without being opened. So we carried copies around to conventions hoping we would meet a publisher, somebody that, or at least an editor, an agent, somebody that would take it up the line. And we met a publisher, supposedly. He was a guest at another convention. And after hours and hours of back and forth and talking and my book going to one of his editors to read, I signed a 5-year, 4-novel contract with this guy. And my first book, a year and a half ago, we got a text message. This was a small publisher. There's different types of publishers. You have print on demand, and you have boutique publishing, which is just kind of people order small amounts of your book to put in shops. And I'm talking too much about this, but at any rate, this guy texted us. We were just walked out of the White House because we were guests at Cosplacon, and we got to go through the White House. We got a text from my publisher saying, I just walked out of a business meeting, I sold 50,000 copies of your novel. And we didn't believe him. We got confirmation from him with a breakdown on money and all these other things, and it was with Hudson Press. If anybody's familiar with airport bookstores, that's Hudson Press. And supposedly they bought 50,000 copies of my book, and my cut was, my first royalty check was more than I make in 3 years. Got my royalty check, certified from FedEx, went to put it in the bank, and there was no money in that account. And after being told for 4 months, stalling, oh, we're in negotiations, it's all going to get done, don't worry about it, I actually contacted the company themselves and found out they'd never heard of the guy. It was a complete, total fraud. After cutting my convention schedule back to 2 cons a month, so I could write full-time, and I was working on my 3rd novel then. It was all fraud. So how can you tell a bad publisher? Don't ask me, I'm an idiot. And if you read the reviews online from people who have ventured an opinion without knowing the whole story, I am an idiot.
No.
So you wasted your time coming to my panel. The truth is, it's hard to tell, but one of the ways you can tell, if you're looking at a book, if the margins aren't consistent, you have a bad publisher. If there are mistakes on the copyright page, you have a bad editor, a bad publisher. Editors have different jobs, and that's a whole different point. And we only have 5 minutes before Johnny Young Bosch is in here for a real panel. So let's talk about the climax, because that's the part I'm most interested in. I mean, storytelling. Your story should have an earth-shattering climax to it. Okay, I tend to make my outlines I like alliteration because it's easier to remember the points. So, anybody familiar with Norse mythology? You remember Ragnarok? That's the huge end of the world and everything's coming together. That's the climax of your story. It should be, even if you have a great setting, great storytelling style, and memorable characters, if you don't have an amazing climax to your story, no one's going to read the book again. Or they're going to leave the movie theater disappointed. And I know that's happened to me, where they've had this amazing... Did anybody remember Monty Python's Holy Grail? Okay, they intentionally, when you reach a certain level of mastery, you actually screw with perceptions because you can. Not because they couldn't have done a good climax, but because they built the entire movie to the one, we're now storming the castle. And then as they're charging towards it and the music is building to a crescendo, the cops show up and arrest them. And that's the end of the movie. They violated every point in my outline. Keep your world consistent, have an earth-shattering climax. And 40 years later, this is still an iconic movie because of that. It was masterful. But when you're writing a story or telling a story, it should have a climax. Otherwise, what you have is a joke with a lame punchline. And you have friends to tell you those stories. Okay? Find a good punchline. Your climax should be epic scale it should also be riveting. It should keep their attention. And when it happens, when the big fight scene happens, somebody talked about the Percy Jackson stuff. I've only seen one of the movies, but it did the same thing the Harry Potter stuff did. It builds to a big fight. And for Harry Potter, did you notice it was always at the end of the school year? Thank God Voldemort thought education was important.
Yeah.
I mean, he let Harry go through the whole school year, every year, to get to the end. But you want your climax to be riveting. It should keep people's attention. You ever gotten to that point in a book where it's 3 a.m. and you know you have to work or go to school in the morning?
And you
you're not
can't
gonna
put it down
anyway because you only have 70 pages left. 5 o'clock hits and you're almost there. And it's all, you can't put it down. I feel every time I read a book like that I should be sending the author a thank you for ruining my night's sleep. And for being amazing. You want your story to be that way where people cannot put it down. Okay? The other thing it should do is it should invite a return. You should tell a story. It should be complete, but at the same time, it should invite a sequel. Separate story, but same characters, because you've now captured everybody's imagination to the point that they want more. And if you've ever done that, it's 7 o'clock in the morning, you finally finish the book, and you're mad now. That was awesome! Where's more? It's like a caffeine addict who only had a drink of my throwback. Your story needs to be that way. It should invite a return. People want more. And now I'm going to sit down and shut up, and it's their turn.